Can you imagine hearing these words as a child? Those were the last words my father said to me before he shoved me into an October storm and locked the door behind me. Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter. I was 15 years old. No coat, no phone, no money, just a school backpack with algebra homework inside and rain already soaking through my sneakers. 3 hours later, the police called him, and when he heard what they said, his face went white as a ghost. But by then, it was already too late. My name is Sherry Walls. I'm 28 now, sitting in my Boston apartment, watching rain slide down the window. There's a letter on my kitchen table. Cheap nursing home stationery. Shaky handwriting. After 13 years of silence, my father wants to see me. He says he's dying. He says he's sorry. Funny thing about rain, it always takes me back to that night. October 14th, 2011. I remember coming home from school like it was any other day. Backpack over one shoulder, mind full of the algebra test I just aced. I was thinking about dinner, about homework, about a band poster I wanted to buy with my birthday money. Normal 15-year-old thoughts. I had absolutely no idea that in less than 2 hours, I'd be walking alone through a freezing storm, wondering if I was going to survive the night. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. My father was standing in the living room, rigid, furious, like a volcano about to erupt. His face was red, his hands were shaking, and he was holding a wad of cash in one fist and empty pill bottles in the other. Behind him stood my sister, Karen, 19 years old, 4 years older than me. She wore the perfect expression: concerned, heartbroken, the devoted older sister who had just discovered something terrible about her little sibling. But I saw her eyes, that flicker she couldn't hide, satisfaction. Our stepmother, Jolene, hovered silently in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed together, saying nothing. That was her specialty, saying nothing while bad things happened. My father didn't let me put down my backpack. He started screaming like I'd set the house on fire. He accused me of stealing money from his wallet, of buying pills, of hiding them in my room, of talking to drug dealers. He said Karen had found the evidence: cash in my dresser, pill bottles in my closet, text messages proving everything. I tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to tell him none of it was true, but the words died in my throat because I realized something terrifying. He wasn't listening. His mind was already made up. Karen had spent the entire day poisoning him with lies, feeding him a story so carefully crafted it felt real. She stood there crying, saying she tried to help me, that she didn't want to tell him, but she couldn't watch her little sister destroy herself anymore. It was an award-winning performance, and my father believed every word. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and dragged me toward the front door. My backpack lay where I dropped it. He snatched it up and threw it into my chest so hard I stumbled backward. Then he opened the door. Rain poured down in sheets. Thunder rolled in the distance. The temperature had dropped sharply. He looked me straight in the eyes. "Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." He shoved me onto the porch. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. And just like that, I was homeless. I stood there for minutes, frozen in shock, not even from the cold. I kept waiting for the door to open again, for someone to say it was a mistake. Nobody came. My phone was still on my bedroom desk. I had no jacket, no money, no way to call for help. My backpack held textbooks, a half-eaten granola bar, and nothing useful for surviving the night. So I started walking. I didn't choose a direction. My body just moved toward the only safe place I knew. My grandmother's house. 7 miles away. 7 miles doesn't sound like much until you're walking through freezing rain in canvas sneakers. Cars splashed past without slowing down. I was invisible, just a shadow on the roadside. After the first mile, my clothes were soaked. After the second, my fingers went numb. After the third, my teeth chattered uncontrollably. But I kept walking. What else could I do? After 4 miles, my legs gave out. I remember seeing a mailbox ahead and thinking I'd just rest for a second. I never made it. I collapsed into the gravel. Darkness swallowed everything. If you want, I can prepare part 2 next, continuing exactly from this point for AI voice narration. Do you want me to do that? 3 hours after throwing his daughter into a storm, my father's phone rang. A police officer told him his daughter had been found unconscious on Route 9. Hypothermia, ambulance, hospital, and then the words that changed everything. Child Protective Services had been notified. A retired CPS worker named Gloria Hensley was the one who found me. She didn't just see a girl in the rain, she saw abuse. She wrapped me in an emergency blanket, stayed until the ambulance arrived, followed me to the hospital, and sat by my bed until I woke up. When I opened my eyes, she handed me a cup of terrible coffee and asked one simple question. Why was a 15-year-old walking alone in a storm with no coat and no phone? So I told her everything. And she believed me. Those words saved my life. From that moment on, everything changed. Investigations began. Evidence was traced. Lies unraveled. The cash came from Karen. The pills belonged to her boyfriend. The burner phone was hers. The plan was deliberate. She wanted my trust fund, $45,000. That's what my life was worth to her. The court saw the truth. My grandmother was granted custody. My father lost his rights. Karen was convicted of fraud and child endangerment. The golden child fell, and I survived. Life with my grandmother didn't feel real at first. It felt temporary, like I was staying somewhere while waiting for my actual life to resume. Like any moment, someone would knock on the door and say there had been a mistake, that I had to go back. But no one came. Grandma Dorothy's house was quiet in a way my old home never was. Not the tense, tiptoe silence where everyone was afraid to say the wrong thing. This silence was soft, safe. The kind that lets your shoulders drop without you realizing they were clenched. She made soup that first night, chicken noodle from scratch. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and watched me eat like she was afraid I might disappear if she looked away. I didn't talk much. My body was still shaking, not from the cold anymore, but from everything finally stopping. "You're safe here," she said finally. "No one throws you out of this house. Ever." I nodded, because I couldn't speak without crying. That night, I slept in a real bed with clean sheets and 3 blankets. I woke up twice panicking, thinking I was still outside in the rain. Every time I had to remind myself where I was. Warm, dry, alive. The next morning, Grandma took me shopping. Clothes, shoes, a jacket thick enough for winter. She didn't ask if I needed anything. She just put things in the cart and dared anyone to question her. When I apologized for the cost, she stopped the cart and looked me dead in the eyes. "Your mother would have bought you 10 coats if she were here," she said. "I'm just catching up." School changed too. New district, new teachers, new start, no whispers, no looks, no teachers pulling me aside with pity in their eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't someone's problem to manage. I was just a student. But healing isn't instant. Even in safety, the damage lingers. I flinched when voices got loud. I apologized too much. I kept my backpack packed at all times, just in case. Just in case I had to leave again. Therapy helped, slowly, painfully. Session by session, I learned a word that explained my entire childhood. Scapegoat. Karen wasn't just cruel. She was strategic. She needed someone beneath her to stay above water. And I was convenient. Entire childhood. Scapegoat. Karen wasn't just cruel. She was strategic. She needed someone beneath her to stay above water. And I was convenient. When the court case ended, people asked me how I felt. Relieved, angry, numb, all of it at once. I didn't feel victorious watching Karen lose everything. I didn't feel happy seeing my father reduced to silence. I felt empty. Like the war was over, but nobody told my body it could stand down. Years passed. High school ended. College began. I worked 2 jobs, applied for scholarships, paid my way forward inch by inch. I never touched my trust fund until I absolutely had to. It felt cursed, like money soaked in everything I'd survived. When I finally used it for tuition, I promised myself I'd turn it into something worth the pain it caused. I graduated. I moved cities. I learned who I was without fear shaping every decision. And slowly, without realizing it, October stopped terrifying me. Rain became just rain again, until the letter arrived. Seeing my father like that didn't hurt the way I expected. It clarified things. He wasn't a monster. He was weak. And weakness can destroy just as thoroughly as cruelty. Walking out of that nursing home, I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. I felt like a survivor closing a door that should have been shut long ago. Some people think forgiveness means reconciliation. It doesn't. Forgiveness is choosing not to bleed forever from a wound someone else caused. I didn't rebuild that bridge, I burned it, and I walked away without carrying the ashes. Now, when it rains outside my Boston apartment, I don't feel afraid. I make tea. I watch the drops race down the glass. I breathe, because I know this. I survived the worst night of my life, and everything after that, I built it myself. After the storm, life didn't suddenly become perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale where the rain stops and everything blooms overnight. The nights were still long sometimes, the memories still sharp, but the difference was now I had control. I had boundaries. I had choices. Grandma Dorothy's words echoed in my mind often. You are allowed to keep people out even if they are family. You are allowed to protect your heart. It took years for those words to feel like truth instead of comfort, but eventually they became armor. College was a revelation. I found friends who never judged me, teachers who encouraged curiosity instead of obedience. For the first time, I could explore my interests freely writing, history, art without the shadow of constant criticism. I stayed up late reading novels and debating ideas, feeling the thrill of thought that hadn't been dulled by fear. I learned to love learning again, not because it was expected, but because it excited me. I also learned to love myself, in fragments at first. I looked in the mirror and said, "You are enough." I repeated it until the words began to matter. I wrote journals filled with rage, hope, despair, and slowly threads of understanding wove through them. I cried over pages, then laughed over them, then finally smiled. I started to recognize my own voice, my own needs, my own worth. Work was another battlefield. I was determined not to be a victim of circumstance again. I applied to internships, jobs, opportunities that seemed intimidating, that once would have felt unreachable. And I got them. Not because I was lucky, but because I had learned perseverance and resilience. I had been tested in ways most people couldn't imagine, and now I turned that endurance into strength. Love came cautiously. I didn't trust easily. Every gesture, every word was measured. But when I met Alex, it was different. He didn't demand, he didn't judge, he listened. And slowly I allowed myself to feel, to be open, to be vulnerable. It was terrifying at first, but with him, vulnerability didn't feel like danger. It felt like life. Through all this, the rainy nights still came, but now I would sit by my window, a cup of chamomile in hand, and watch the world outside shimmer. I understood the metaphor. Storms are temporary. Even the hardest rains pass. And when they do, the world feels renewed. I kept writing, documenting every step of the journey. Not for recognition, not for sympathy, but for clarity. Writing became my witness, my proof that I existed beyond the pain, that my story mattered. Every word on the page reminded me I am alive, I am strong, I am free. Grandma Dorothy aged gracefully, as if she had already mastered the art of patience. I visited her often, bringing laughter, stories, and sometimes silence. She never asked for anything, never demanded acknowledgement. Her presence was steady, a reminder that love could be unconditional and kind. When she passed away, it was peaceful. I cried, truly cried, but I didn't feel abandoned. I felt grateful. She had given me the tools to survive, to thrive, to reclaim a life stolen from me. She had taught me that safety isn't a place, it's a feeling you carry inside. I moved on to build a career I was proud of. I mentored young women who reminded me of myself, lost, afraid, overlooked. I told them my story not for pity, but to show them the truth. Survival is possible. Healing is possible. Life can be beautiful again, even after the worst nights. And so years later, I sit in my sunlit apartment writing this story. The rain taps gently against the windows, a soft reminder of the past. I sip my tea and smile because I know who I am now. Not a victim, not a shadow, not a ghost. I am me, whole, resilient, free. The nights of terror may have shaped me, but they do not define me. The choices I make, the love I give, the life I create, these are mine, mine alone. And that truth is more powerful than any storm ever was. I survived, I rose, and now I live. Even with stability and peace, The past sometimes crept in like an uninvited guest. A smell, a phrase, a passing shadow in a crowded street could trigger memories I thought I had buried. But now, the difference was in my response. I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I acknowledged it, named it, and let it pass. The trauma had lost its grip because I had learned to reclaim my own power. Travel became my therapy. I visited cities I had only dreamed of, stood on cliffs overlooking oceans, walked through forests where sunlight danced on leaves, and felt the world in a way I never had before. Each journey reminded me that life is vast, full of possibilities, and my past, however dark, was only one chapter in an expansive story. I started collecting experiences, not possessions, learning that freedom wasn't about things. It was about moments, connection, and self-discovery. I also learned the importance of community. I surrounded myself with people who uplifted me, people who celebrated my victories and shared my burdens. Friendships that were once shallow or transactional became deep and meaningful. I realized that family doesn't always have to be blood. It can be chosen and trusted. And for the first time, I felt anchored not by fear, but by genuine care and mutual respect. My health, once neglected under the weight of anxiety and depression, became a priority. I exercised not to punish my body, but to honor it. I cooked meals with intention, savoring the colors and flavors, understanding that nourishment was a form of love. Meditation and mindfulness practices grounded me in moments of tension, reminding me that peace isn't a destination, it's a practice. Professional success followed naturally because my inner foundation was solid. I pursued projects that challenged me, collaborated with people who inspired me, and refused to settle for mediocrity. Each accomplishment wasn't just a resume bullet. It was proof to myself that resilience bears fruit. I started mentoring, speaking at workshops, sharing strategies for overcoming adversity, and realized that my story had power beyond my own life. It could inspire, guide, and transform others. Romantic relationships evolved too. Where once I would have tolerated manipulation or disrespect, I now demanded authenticity. Love, I discovered, isn't about filling a void or healing wounds. It's about mutual growth, joy, and respect. With Alex, every day was an exercise in understanding patience and shared laughter. The small moments, a quiet morning together, a spontaneous adventure, a simple hug, taught me more about connection than any grand gesture ever could. Yet, I never forgot the lessons from the hardest chapters. I documented everything: journals, photographs, letters, so that I could reflect, remember, and honor the journey. Each entry was a testament to survival and evolution. I knew one day someone might read these words and find hope. Someone might realize that no matter how dark life seems, the possibility of light exists, and with courage, it can be found. My nights still occasionally carried the echo of fear, but now I greeted them with preparation, not panic. I lit candles, played soft music, and read stories that filled me with warmth. I understood that the mind holds memory, but the body and spirit hold resilience. The heart can be wounded, but it also has an infinite capacity to heal and love again. Years passed, and with each passing year, I grew more attuned to the rhythm of life. I celebrated victories both small and monumental, knowing that joy is as essential as survival. I allowed myself moments of indulgence, a luxurious bath, a favorite meal, a weekend getaway, because self-care is not selfish. It is recognition of one's own worth. Eventually, I began speaking publicly, sharing my journey of survival and reclamation. People often asked how I endured, how I transformed fear into strength. I would smile and say, the only way forward is through. You endure, you choose, and you reclaim your life piece by piece. It is painstaking, yes, but it is also profoundly liberating. And when I returned to my childhood home years later, it felt different. The walls that had once held terror now seemed like silent witnesses to my journey. I walked through the rooms with respect, not fear, acknowledging the past without being imprisoned by it. I understood fully that the house had never defined me. I had defined myself. As the sun set that evening, casting warm hues across the faded walls, I whispered a silent thank you to the child I once was, the frightened, lost girl who had survived. I promised her that every step I took from that day forward would honor her courage. I would live fully, love deeply, and never. I had defined myself. As the sun set that evening, casting warm hues across the faded walls, I whispered a silent thank you to the child I once was, the frightened, lost girl who had survived. I promised her that every step I took from that day forward would honor her courage. I would live fully, love deeply, and never forget the lessons that had shaped me into the woman I had become. Life, I realized, isn't about the absence of storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain, to find light in shadows, and to reclaim every part of yourself that was once lost. And with that understanding, I stepped out into the world, heart open, spirit unbroken, ready for whatever came next.